Welcome to Polthaus Workshop's video series. This is the third detailed video in the sharpening video set, and this one's dedicated to Scary Sharp or Sandpaper Sharpening. Now, Scary Sharp or Sandpaper Sharpening, as it's known by many people, dates back probably quite a ways prior to its official name of Scary Sharp. People were putting adhesive sandpaper onto table saw tops, especially those that were some of the older, heavier duty ones, plate glass or float glass like this, or a granite surface, for quite a while. However, thanks to Mr. Al Gore and the internet, message boards started popping up in the early 90s as a real popular way for people to communicate their hobbies. In California, there was USNet or USNet, and on the message board rec.woodworking, some guys got together and were talking about certain ways to sharpen their tools as one of the sidebar conversations. Mr. Bennett Leeds mentioned it, or Benet Leeds mentioned it in September of '94 and again in May of '95. Ron Hawk, who a lot of people know in the woodworking community, he's sort of a heavyweight in tool making, mentioned it again in February of '95, but it really got a springboard in November of '95 when Mr. Steve LaMancha wrote like an entire article about the Scary Sharp name. He sort of coined the phrase Scary Sharp for everybody, and referred to it in this method where he actually put sandpaper with a little bit of 3M adhesive onto some sandpaper and then stuck it to a piece of plate glass. What I've got today are all of these grits. I don't know if you can see how well these are. 100, 250, 320, 500, 1000, 1500, 2500, and 3000. A lot of these higher grits are a little hard to come by. However, once again, thanks to the wonders of the internet, you can find these on several abrasive makers' websites now. These are from this company, USA Abrasives. I ordered them online. They come in sheets like that. They also come in rolls. These are adhesive backed already. All of these wider ones are off the rolls, and then the finer came in sheets that I just sprayed the back of with some 3M 77 adhesive. It works good because you can stick it down and peel it back up without a whole lot of mess. The adhesive on the back of these is okay. I sometimes will spray it additionally. Just lay the sandpaper face down into a cardboard box or onto a piece of scrap plywood and just give the back a quick spritz and then adhere it down, making sure that there's nothing underneath of the sandpapers. You don't want any lumps or bumps in there, and making sure that it lays down flat without any ripples in the paper's surface itself. Now, ranging in grits from this 100 to 3000, they're all wet-dry sandpapers. Some of them are aluminum oxide, some of them are silicon carbide, but they all can use water or be used dry. I'll use them dry today, but I find that just a little bit of water sprayed on the surface of some of these actually aids in the cutting action. Especially as you get up into the polishing ones, the water actually helps quite a bit. In addition to these finer grits, I've also got these Pinnacle honing films that I picked up at Woodcraft. This one is a 5 micron. This one is a 15 micron. And this one is a 0.3 micron. So these are definitely honing and polishing films, as opposed to some of these, which are definitely more for sharpening. As you get up into the 2500 and 3000, we actually start approaching the range of some of the 15 and 5 micron films. These are intended to be used with this Pinnacle honing plate. It's a machined aluminum channel that these just adhere to the surface of. These come pre-backed with adhesive. But I don't use this a lot simply because it's kind of clunky and you got to have some extra stuff to keep it from moving around. I will just a lot of times adhere the honing film right to this, Or this one actually works really well if you just spritz the plate glass with a little bit of water and then adhere it down just using the capillary action of the water. The vacuum and friction it creates underneath the surface of the honing film usually is enough to keep it down while I'm honing. Once I peel these up after I've used them, they do tend to wear rather quickly because they're just sandpaper. I'll take this little window scraper that I picked up at Lowe's and just clean off the adhesive or any gunk left behind. Wipe it down with like a little bit of Windex is fine, but if you'd rather use, you know, lacquer thinner or something, that's fine too. A little bit of rubbing alcohol, just something to dissolve and remove any of the adhesive that's left behind. But this tool works pretty good and I don't have to use any liquids. I can take you through some of these grits on this old Wade Butcher blade out of a coffin smoother. This is the old plain blade. And typically we'd start, you know, with something like this that needs quite a bit of work. I go ahead and start on the 100 grit. Now, these sandpapers can be adhered in any orientation you want. So they can even, you know, you can put them on diagonal if you're better this way, or along the side like this, so that you could take the plain blade all the way down. But since we've got these oriented this way, for show's sake, at this point I'd probably take this one along here at an angle and we just work it along the side of the sandpaper, being careful to keep it nice and flat on the base. I don't want it to rock anywhere. Keep this flat and push down. And the nice thing about this glass surface is that float glass is extremely flat. I picked this up, again, I've mentioned in several other my blog posts, I picked this up at a glass cutter near where I work. I got it real cheap. It was a second. Somebody didn't come pick it up, or it was the wrong size for whatever job they were working. So it was real easy to get. A lot of woodworking retailers and several places online sell machined granite slabs that are kind of nice. They're big and thick, you know, usually about this big. And you can adhere the sandpaper right to the surface of those, no problem. But for these purposes, we've got this one set up already, so we're going to work this blade. And you can see this 100 grit cuts very fast, especially when it's dry. If you use it dry, it tends to wear a little faster. So you may have to replace this a couple of times before you get this iron to a place where you're comfortable with moving to the next grit. So we continue to work this until I was happy with how flat the back has gotten. And on this 100 grit, that actually wore fairly fast. It looks okay to move on to the next grit. And because I'm wearing it at an angle here, I got most of the heavy duty cutting out of the way. So I started this one over here. I'm right-handed. If you're left-handed, it might help to start on the other side. So once I've got that to where I want it, I can move to the 250. And because this is oriented in the middle of these, it's just as easy to take it and bring it back. Again, making sure that I'm applying pressure across the front edge, making sure that the iron is flat, and just gently drawing it back. Now this will take longer. You can also do forward and backward to work it across the surface of this paper, but be very careful as you push not to lift the back of the iron or the chisel, whatever you're working on, because you don't want to round over underneath on the back, especially of a plain blade. So we'll work our way across, back. Alright, and that's starting to wear fairly well there. A little bit more on this, but I'm apply a little pressure here because that side was still a little high. There, that's much better. And as you're going across with some of these, you can take a rag and wipe off some of that the metal filings or swarf that's left behind. You can kind of brush it off. I'll sometimes use I picked this up in an antique store. It's just an old antique barber's brush. A lot of metal, the metal filings, it'll brush those off real well. They also sell brushes, heavy duty. They almost look like a paintbrush. I know Lee Nielsen sells one for cleaning off planes. You can clean out the wood chips and stuff, but this works pretty well for this. I've also seen people use a heavy duty magnet, which works really well to clear a lot of that out. So you just take a a big block magnet that you find at the hardware store and brush it over the top of your sandpaper, and it tends to clean a lot of the metal filings out really quickly and efficiently, and then you just wipe it off when you're done. So we take this to the next grit, this 320. Again, I work this just like I worked it on the 250. And I had a conversation with a real good friend of mine over the weekend who had a couple questions about working the back of a large chisel he was working on. And he brought it to my attention that I hadn't mentioned yet that you may not start to feel a burr across the bevel of your tool as you're flattening the back. That's okay. If you get the back of whatever tool you happen to be sharpening or flattening, you get that back totally flat, you still may not feel a burr across the front edge. That's due to the fact that your bottom is perfectly flat, but the bevel may not be sharpened enough that the tip is actually touching the back of the plane. It might still have that kind of screwdriver edge on there, a flat edge running all the way across the tip. Even though you may not be able to see it with your naked eye, you might be able to see a little bit of light reflecting back just on that very edge there, or you may not even be able to see that. But if it's not raising a burr, you're probably not sharpened enough on the bevel. So don't continue to work the back of the blade forever until you feel that burr on here. Once you know the back is flat, move to your bevel, because to remove enough material off the back of this that it touches the bevel might take you 6 weeks, who knows. But once you get the back flat, then work on the bevel to raise that burr. So we go back to the 320 here.